If you've attended a church service lately, you may have noticed that pews are a little emptier. That may be because new studies show that more people are no longer attending church, or they've turned away from religion altogether. Some of the reasons from the studies: people no longer believe in the teachings, their religion's stance on LGBTQ issues, scandals in the church, and congregations becoming too political. So right now we have a nice group here joined by a number of our city's religious leaders and scholars to discuss this topic. And I'm so glad to have you all here. What an important discussion to have. So I was hoping to go through with each of you just to get your take on why you think people are turning away. I was hoping that we could start with Scott.
Yeah, so, you know, the study is interesting in the sense that it's talking about people's individual choices for moving away from faith. But these are trends that go back much farther back than recent years, starting in the 1960s, due to a whole variety of cultural and social trends as well.
And Brock, what's your take on this, on some of the studies that have come out?
Yeah, so I teach at the University of Pittsburgh. I teach religious studies courses, and overwhelmingly, many of my students identify as non-religious and as spiritual but not religious. And so they're disaffected from religious institutions. They don't trust them. They feel like they're more interested in maintaining power than actually helping people. And yet they still remain very interested in spiritual questions, and they're interested in learning about other faith traditions.
And Erin, tell us a little bit about you and what you think about these trends and these studies.
So I'm the associate pastor for queer and neighborhood ministries at Commonwealth of Oakland, which is a church in the Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh. I feel like a lot of these trends have to do with the mistreatment of the LGBTQ community and the pervasive trauma that comes through their experiences in the church. The way that leaders treat the queer community and the way that they treat the trauma that they experience from their lives within the church really drives people away.
And Mike, tell us about you and your take on all of it.
Yeah, I'm Mike Holohan. I'm pastor of the Commonwealth of Oakland, and I think the article does a really great job of identifying like the major reasons why people are disaffiliating from religion. I think where there's space to build on is talking about what are the responses and what are the changes that need to happen to address those things. I think that sometimes folks focus on sort of technical things like let's have a high production worship service or meet in a coffee shop or meet online, and those are fine, but they don't really address the fundamental issues that are happening. And so there really needs to be like a change of culture in Christian churches.
Yeah, and Brock, you mentioned something. I think this is interesting. People who are identifying as their religious background is none, or how they identify, but they still want the spirituality. Are all of you finding that it's not that they want to identify with one specific religion, but that they are spiritual?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. These people still tend to have spiritual experiences. It's just that because of the way that they've experienced the church, the language for how to describe those experiences has been taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to elaborate a little bit more, since you're teaching this and you're seeing it?
Yeah, so some of the data suggests that so about 1/3 of Americans now identify as non-atheist agnostic, but 60% of them still say they believe in God, of the nones, even though only 4% go to a weekly service. But then 40% say they have a spiritual experience on a weekly basis. And so they want to cultivate ways of making meaning, but they don't trust the institution as a whole.
Interesting. And Scott, you actually have a book coming out. What have you looked into with this?
So there's a whole variety of other social and systemic dimensions to this. Over the last couple hundred years, Western cultures have moved towards secularization, and so what that means is the background conditions of belief are now that there's a lot of possibilities. And so to believe in God is against the background that it's possible to not believe in God, which is a new kind of dimension. And I don't think our religious communities have adjusted to the ways that belief has shifted. Another big change in the United States is since the 1950s, voluntary participation has changed really dramatically. So our congregations all depend upon people giving time, money, knowing how to serve on committees, and for a lot of reasons, Americans are moving away from that kind of participation. And so our ways of organizing need to change. And that's why I think like the work that Mike and Erin are doing, being very creative about forming communities in new ways, around the kinds of things that Brock is talking about. I think these are the things to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the spaces both of you have created for this. What are you hearing from some of your parishioners who are coming in? What do they want to see?
I think that one of the things the article really gets right is that people are losing their beliefs, right? Which is not necessarily the same as not believing any longer. But the thing about Christian communities is that membership often hinges on having similar or identical beliefs. And so when someone starts to question or to doubt or maybe to let go of some of those beliefs, it can create a lot of anxiety. There's a lot at stake. You might lose a really supportive community. You might even lose some of your primary relationships. This can be really disruptive in families. And so folks are really looking for a safe space to explore, to ask questions, to doubt, to let go of some things, and also maybe to add new things to their practice of Christianity.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate, Erin?
Yeah, I think one of the areas that we really try to help people reclaim their spirituality and give language back to it is at Commonwealth we have what's called Forest Church. And what that is we go into the woods and we take 20 minutes to simply be in creation together and to contemplate what God might have to say through nature. Then we come back and we discuss what we saw, what we heard, and what we felt, and it kind of turns into a sermon altogether. Wow. Now, Forest Church is designed so that there is no scripture and there is no sermon. It's like in the classic sense. But that's meant as a kind of a rehabilitative tool to help people who have experienced church hurt come back into a spiritual space without those triggers.
And for you two who are analyzing and looking at this, where do you think we go from here? I mean, creating spaces like this is certainly a first step.
Yeah, this is very easy. How much time do we have?
Just with
Right. Yeah, let's fix this. Do you have 20 seconds to fix this problem?
I mean, I do think that what we need are creative experiments in forming community. I don't think people are not looking for God, and I don't think that God is not a present being that is active in some way, shape, or form in the world. And so, you know, the invitation, I think, to communities of faith are to connect themselves to that.
And I would just add, I think we need to kind of redefine how we define what religion is. So we tend to think of religion as believing in a list of doctrines, whereas many other religious traditions are focusing on practices and focusing on how to cultivate an authentic faith rather than, you know, performing a checklist. And that kind of redefining could be very productive.
Thank you all for your take on this latest trend and studies coming out. We really appreciate what you're doing here today.
Thank you.